Mr. Roy, not Mr. Coach Roy Okonji is going to be our speaker today. Has a lot of wealth of experience in educating people on this field, and he has worked in the bank also. So he will be able to tell us more and more. Can we invite our brother, Coach Roy Okonji? Please clap for him. Karibu, Coach.
Chair. So the chair, your entire board, Madam CEO, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, hamjambo. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. You're good? Good. I'm also fine, and I'm glad that we have an opportunity to meet and talk about this subject. Like you've heard, I'm Roy Okonji. The world calls me Coach Roy Okonji. And I thank God for the opportunity to be used in that manner, to be able to lead conversations of that nature. There is plenty that can be said about money. Of course, we may not have the entire time to talk about everything that there is to say about money, but we will try to say as much as we can. I have a personal mantra that I always seek to simplify things, and so my prayer is that at the end of this, I will have tried to simplify things to a point where we can all be able to identify with. So I'm calling today's conversation Foundations of Money Management. When I received the brief from the Sacco, I went through it and I saw two thematic areas, and I looked at a way of merging them, and I found myself going back to where we need to start from when we are talking about money. And so today we say a few things about foundations of money management. Thank you very much, Reverend, for setting the pace. When you were speaking, I could see us connected in the spirit. So I intend to say a few things about those three areas. So are you ready for this conversation? Allow me to give you a disclaimer that I always give every time I have chance to speak about money. That in the course of the words that I will be using, chances are very high that I will pinch you, not once, not twice. When you feel me pinching you, don't take it personal. Take it as a wake-up call. Tuko sawa mpaka hapo? Because I want us to keep it real. Okay? Now, allow me to ask us a simple question. Why do you behave with your money the way you do? Why do you behave with your money the way you do? I don't want you to answer me, but I want you to answer yourself. I'm trying to ask, why did you choose to join Biblia Sacco? Why did you settle on the amount that you save every month? Why do you live in the house that you live in and pay the rent that you pay if you are paying rent? Why do you shop where you shop and using the amount that you use for your shopping? Why did you drive here? Why did you pick a taxi here? Why did you walk here? Why did you use a motorbike when you came here? Why did you borrow the loan you borrowed last time? And what informed the amount that you chose? We must begin to study our behavior around money. And he also showed us that success in the world of money is not really a factor of how much you know about money. There are people who know a lot about money, but they are still struggling financially. Part of the reasons why I love talking about money, and I truly do, because this is the only thing I do, talking about money and other life skills, it's not because I have all the money under the sun. Neither is it because I know everything about money. But it's because partly I love sharing what I learn. But secondly, it's because I've also lived a real life financially. I've made mistakes. As some of you might be aware, I am still the only award-winning borrower this side of the universe. I hold a very expensive trophy that was given to me by one of my Shylocks back in the day for being the most trustworthy borrower and for continued business. I know you know who Shylocks are. And I leave it to you to imagine, who is this Shylock in their right frame of mind who would decide to spend business money? You know, Shylocks are supposed to be mean. They're not as generous as the Sacco. To spend business money to buy a trophy, to award someone. I leave it to you to imagine how much business I had given that Shylock. And that was just one of them. My story has aired in the media very many times because of how I was messed up in the world of borrowing. I used to borrow at the slightest provocation. You sit next to me and you behave in a manner to suggest that you have some money you don't know what to use it for. And I will quickly suggest that you lend it to me. I will even suggest that I will add you something on top when I'm repaying. I abused a very beautiful gift that God gave me. And I thank Him that He has not taken it away. And that was the gift of trust. People easily trust me. I now turned that trust into an avenue of getting money. I was not building houses. I wish I was. But I was financing lifestyle. And by the time I was receiving this trophy, because I cherish it so much, that trophy is what marked my turning point. The day the G4S guy delivered that trophy is when my eyes opened. That's when I started asking myself, you mean I'm being awarded, not for any other thing, but for borrowing? Not even from the bank, not even from the Sacco, but from that other market. And I placed it on my desk, and I told myself, every morning as I report to this office, may this remind me of the work that is ahead of me until I regain control of my situation. My colleagues did not know what I was going through. I was still a banker then. I would still put up a smile. Customers would still admire me. But deep within, I was suffering. Many of my colleagues came to know about the truth of that trophy when KTN came to cover that story. They were the first media house to come to cover that story. And that time, I was owing a multitude. Not many people. I was owing a multitude. Because it's in the public domain, I will tell you. When I started the journey of fighting for my freedom, after receiving that trophy, I listed down the people I was owing money. And this is everyone. The banks, the Sacco, the microfinances, the Shylocks, individuals, everyone. I was owing not 5, not 10, not 20, not 30, not 40, not 50, not 60, not 70. I was owing a record, and this is true story, 86 lenders. 86 is not just a number. 86 are pressure points. When these people decide to raid you, Mondays used to be hell on earth days for me. It's like these guys belong to a WhatsApp group. They discuss on Sunday evening. Tomorrow we are raiding. I get to the office, I'm looking at my laptop, but there's nothing I'm doing. Just because an SMS came. And you see, in the world of borrowing, when a lender calls you when you have defaulted, whether you pick the call or not, the message is home. And the Bible was not wrong when it said that the borrower becomes slave to such a lender. When that SMS has come, you are a slave to them. Your mind is taken captive. My laptop is black. The screen has gone. People think I'm working, but I'm not. I'm not working. I usually go deeper into that when we are talking about debt management, a conversation for another day. But the question I'm asking us is, why do you behave the way you do? Why was I so easy to take up debt just like that? Why was I so reckless? A lot of things go into influencing our behavior. A lot of things. Then Dave Ramsey, a good friend, came and summarized what Morgan had written. And he said money is about 80% behavior and 20% head knowledge. Remember, I was a banker and I was advising customers. And not wrongly, I was actually advising them correctly. But I forgot to advise myself. Muganga hajigangi, sindio? But it was not about the head knowledge that I had. Money requires something else. Our behavior around it is what will dictate what becomes of our story in the world of money. You can learn a lot of things. Today you can pick so many lessons here, but if you don't put them into practice, what matters is the results that the practice will give. I hope we are saying something. Now, part of the things that will dictate how we behave around money will be our emotions. Will be our emotions, how we feel. Sometimes we spend our money based on how we are feeling. If we are feeling sad, we want to spend our money in a certain way. If we are excited, we might become spendthrifts. We want to please people, isn't it? If we are worried, we might also spend our money in a certain way. The second thing that will dictate how we spend our money is our mindset, and that's the largest thing. Our wiring around money, how we think around money. Mindset is very key. How we think about money. And we were reminded, many times the Bible has even reminded us that as a man thinketh, yes. And if any renewal has to happen to us, it has to start with the renewal of the what? Of the mind. And now how you think is dictated by many things. Your upbringing. The things you saw your parents do about money. If you are not keen to charter your own path, chances are very high that we will behave the same way our parents were doing what? Behaving. Studies have shown that an average adult will behave about 60% exactly the same way their parents and guardians were behaving. So if you're brought up by parents who would say, kula tano, weka tano, chances are very high when you start handling your money, the voices of kula tano, weka tano are sounding in your head. What about if you're brought up by parents who say, YOLO, you only live once? You might also begin to do the same until you can sit and say, hey, I think this path is misleading me. That's why sometimes I'm also very keen with parents. There's something I do called financial parenting. I'm trying to remind us as parents. We keep crying that our parents did not speak to us about money. And we are doing nothing to our children about the same. Chances are very high tomorrow our children will be referring to us when they give that statement. Mindset can also be influenced by knowledge, the things you've been learning. Mindset can be influenced by social norms. It's a critical factor in influencing how you behave. There is a reason why every time someone would behave in a manner to suggest that they had money, something in my way of thinking would tell me I should take that money. Because for me, that time, debt was a shortcut. And that's why there is addiction to borrowing. It's a secondary addiction in society today. We look at debt as a crutch. We want to hold on to it to solve our financial issues. We need to be careful. Another thing will be personality. And personality is a bit natural, a bit unchangeable, but there is something we can do about mindset. There is something we can do about our emotions. And there is also something we can do about bettering our relationship with money as dictated by our personalities. I will not go into the details. It's a heavy conversation. But I wanted to highlight that you need to start understanding yourself. Progress in life begins at the point of self-awareness. When you begin to realize, hey, when I am angered, I behave this way. Once you know that, you are one step ahead in managing yourself. I used to have a colleague who used to drive at very high speeds. And we used to have those vehicles that would go up to 220 kilometers per hour. And that guy would stretch that thing to see whether it can hit the limit. And that guy has had all the accidents you can think about in life. Yes. You are walking with him or driving with him, and you see an accident, and the guy tells you, it reminds me about one day when I was in Kapsabet. And my car rolled several times, and God has been very gracious to this friend of mine. Another day you are discussing something else, and he tells you, one day in Karen, they were constructing a road, and this happened. That guy has knocked vehicles from behind, has even knocked police vehicles from behind. So one day I sat with him, and we were driving to Nyeri. And the boss had been tough on him, and the guy was angered. And he got out of the road, and he told me, you drive the vehicle. And I asked him, what is wrong? And I told him, he told me, lately I've realized I overspeed when I am angered. Now that's a good place to start from. Once you identify how you behave in certain situations. I thank God he saw the light. He no longer drives that way. But you can imagine what would have become of him. So because of our behavior around money, influenced by how we think, I came up with some things I call realities of money. Very basic things about money to help us begin to probably look at money a bit differently. There are 7 of them, but I will not take us through all the 7, probably 3 or 4. But I think I've shared all the 7 on my YouTube channel. You can interact later. There is something you can see on the board. What are you able to see? In this class we will talk. I have not come to give a keynote address, so we will be talking. What can you see? A mountain, yes. What else? Someone carrying a mountain, okay, I think we can leave it there. We can see someone lifting a heavy thing. Let's call it a mountain, right? In physical terms, it might not be possible to do that. For you to be able to lift that mountain, physically speaking, you must be very powerful, isn't it? You have a lot of strength. You have a lot of power. Spiritually speaking, you have a lot of faith. It's the only thing we know that can move mountains, isn't it? Right? That takes us to the first reality that I want to share with us today. The reality says that money is powerful. Money is powerful. That is basic. Someone is even wondering, why did this guy have to come to remind us that money is powerful? You know, money dictates a lot of things in life. Money gives you options. Money helps you say either this or that. Have you noticed when you are broke, your life is usually very linear, very straightforward. When you wake up in the morning, you don't disturb us. You just prepare as you... Leo situjaribu huku. Ama tuitishe tu na app. Because now you have options. Money is so powerful. Money dictates a lot of things in life. Politically speaking, money still unfortunately dictates who we put in power. People will come to you with great ideas, you will clap for them, you will say, yes, this guy is visionary. This guy has ideas that can change this nation. But on the day of voting, when you face that ballot paper in that booth, the noises of the choppers are crowding your head until you forget the guy you saw being visionary, and you end up marking against the chopper guy without even asking where the money to buy the chopper or hire the chopper came from. Money dictates the music we listen to. There are many people, probably even here, who can compose music that will change this world. But because they didn't have money to produce the music, they've been forced to sit down and listen to music made by those who can make music. I've heard people say different things about the power of money. I've heard people, for example, say, pesa huvunja mlima. You've heard that, isn't it? What else have you heard about the power of money? Pesa ni sabuni ya roho. They have refused to answer me how much we need so that roho can be as clean as it should. I'm still asking them. What else have you heard about the power of money? Yes? Money talks, yes, thank you. Yes, what else? What have you heard your people say about money? Yes, sir. Yes? Pesa ni maua. Aha, tena ya ua. I've also heard that. So it opens doors. Yes, it can also close others. Okay? Interesting. Now, one day I asked a similar question, the same question actually. I was training operators in a manufacturing organization, and there were very many in a hall bigger than this. And there's a man who lifted his hand. He was seated at the back, so he was given the microphone, akasimama. And he said, Coach, if I had money, then he switched into Kiswahili. Ningetembea aste aste. Nikuja hapo mahali umesimama. Then he went into English. Slap you very well. Pay you. And then you would thank me. While they were laughing like you are doing, I thought about it and said, this guy has a point. You know, when you have money, you can be slapping people and they even ask you, when next are you planning to slap me so that I can diarize? So I think we are in agreement that money is powerful, isn't it? But that is not the point. Here is the point. If you agree that money is powerful, please agree also with me that next time you receive your money, be careful how you spend it so that you can retain part of this power with you for as long as possible. I hope that is clear. Good. The second reality of money, and you will forgive me, those of you that love cakes. I know some appetites might begin to wake up, and some people might want to start ordering for cakes right now. Just try to hold on a bit. I know we have tried to order, or we have ordered for cakes before, for birthdays, for weddings, for whatever the occasion. Let's assume you ordered for a cake, like this one that you can see on the screen. And then, the delivery guy comes and delivers to you a cake like the one you can see on your right. I always ask, how many of you will accept that delivery? Why not? Oh, it is not full. It is a half. It has been sliced. Now, when it has been sliced, it does not matter the size of what was taken out. The fact is that you ordered for a complete cake, it is no longer complete, isn't it? That takes us to the second reality that says money is finite. Forget about the English. I'm simply saying money reduces as you spend it. Money reduces as you spend it. And I'm not talking about spending it in investing it. But as long as you're using your money to just buy things, consumables, money is coming down. The reason I came up with this reality was after I observed that some of us, when we receive money, we grow wings. We want to fly very high, very fast. We spend money as if There is a reward for the fastest spender. We spend money as if someone is paying us for spending. Then 2-3 days down the line, we are powerless. We are forgetting that money reduces as we do what? We spend. If you agree that money reduces as you spend it, here is the point. Please agree also with me that next time you receive your money, be careful to only spend it on things that add value to you. Because if you spend, it has gone, it has reduced, let it then reduce and leave you with some value, isn't it? Sometimes we regret after spending money. You start asking yourself, was it really necessary for me to spend my money on this thing? Have you asked yourself that question? Sometimes marketers will call it buyer remorse. You really wanted something very badly, you've worked very hard, you've saved for it, you had not evaluated that thing properly, you have bought it. Then you get to your house, you look at it, it's not really what you thought. The utility that you thought you would get from it is not really as you expected. Please avoid spending and regretting, and therefore decide in advance what you want to spend your money on. Number 3. You can see some palm holding some coins, right? I have asked people many times. I know your employers, for those that are employed, will be wiring your money either through the bank, and we have heard that from next year, we will be able to wire it through the Sacco from the FOSA perspective. Let's assume end of this month, your employer comes and says, the HR department comes and says, hey, end of this month, we want to remember what our forefathers went through. For those of you that don't know what our forefathers used to go through, back in the day, on payday, we didn't have computers and systems and all these things. So the stories I've gathered from those who came before us was that when it was payday, there was someone called the paymaster somewhere, or the accounts person. They would sit behind a window somewhere, and they have the record of everyone, and people would line up, and then you get to the window and you stretch your palm, and they put your money in the palm. So these days I ask, assume your HR tell you that this month we will practice that. So there will be some person, either in finance or I don't know which department pays you, who will sit behind some window, and you get there and you stretch your hand. But this time, they will not pay you equivalent of what you have always been getting. They just give you coins that your palm can hold. So if your palm gets filled, you go. How many will consent to that? Many people say no, they won't. And I ask why. And I'm expecting they will tell me coins are heavy. But they don't tell me coins are heavy. They're telling me the coins will be smaller money compared to what I am earning. On that note, allow me to introduce the third reality that says there is no small money. Of all the realities I share, this is the only reality I give my audience the opportunity to repeat it in unison. So are you ready? All right, so 3, 2, and go.
There is no small money.
Thank you. Even if you don't believe it, let me now explain. Now that you have confessed, so you can have some possession. Now, the average human being, and you people are not average by all definitions. Even though sometimes we behave in a manner to suggest that we are average, you are not average. The average human being believes that their money is the smallest. And that's why you hear very many of us, and if you are one of those, like I said, I may pinch you, not once, not twice. You hear many people say things like, haka kapesa ketu, aka kamshahara ketu. You've heard those ones. Unajua vile uchumi iko na aka. It's just that we lack the smallest words to demean our income. Sadly, we don't take a moment to evaluate the impact of the words we use to demean our income. You know, when you keep getting used to speaking words that demean your income, you put a mental lock on yourself. That's why I said by saying the mind plays a big role in our behavior around money. Sometimes I have imagined in your head there is a committee. The committee wants to give you ideas, but the committee members remind themselves, he said his money is still small. Let's wait for the day atatuambia pesa yake imetosha. Then we will give him or her the ideas. And that's why you keep wondering why your head does not see the ideas that probably need to propel you to the next level. I know some of you have visited amongst yourselves. You've gone to visit a friend, a colleague. But there are those people you will visit. And on your way back home, you start talking to yourself. The way you saw the home organized, unaanza kushangaa, hii ni ile mshahara yetu moja, ama huyu mtu ako na njia zingine anapata pesa. Sometimes if you are malicious, you might begin to come up with some theories and say, huyu lazima ako na sponsor. Huyu lazima ako corrupt. But do you realize it might be possible that this person has organized themselves just differently? Their behavior around money is just different from yours. Sometimes we lock because those people might be earning even less than we do. But when we visit them, we go home talking to ourselves. So is it really a question of how much money? Largely, it's a question of our behavior with the much that we have. And many times I ask, how much money is big enough? Do you know it is easier to complain on the corridors of your organization, how they pay you little money? But I've also imagined, assume HR were able to accost you one day, and they tell you, hey, you've been complaining a lot. Please, tell us, how much would you want us to pay you? We will pay you today. Do you know that question can confuse you? Many people will actually say, let me think. But why have you been complaining so easily? I made this statement somewhere. There's a gentleman who lifted his hand and he said, Coach, I think I know how much money I will need. I said, fine, that's nice. How much would you need? And the guy said, if someone paid me 100,000 shillings every month, I will never disturb anyone. I said, that's nice. There was that writing board. So I wrote 100,000. When I turned like this, before I would open my mouth, the guy rose again. He said, Coach, I've just remembered something. Can you make it 200,000? I said, no problem. No problem. I crossed 100 and I wrote 200,000. And then I turned to start explaining something. Again, he lifted his hand and he apologized to the class. He said, sorry for disturbing the class. But I think there are some things I forgot. Now for the last time, if you just make it 500,000, I will never disturb anyone. He said, no problem. This is your class. So I crossed the 200 and I wrote 500,000. And then I turned to start explaining something. Again, he lifted his hand. He said something very important. I have remembered that I had underestimated the number of years I want to live. I have remembered I will live for very many years with this kind of money. And so that I cushion myself from inflation and all these things, just make it 1 million. Class, if any of you meets me and I'm earning 1 million and later you meet me complaining about money, just know I'm a madman. I said, no problem. I crossed 500,000 and I wrote 1 million. When I turned, I asked him, do you also realize that after 1 million, there's another number called 2 millions? Wouldn't you want that one? And the guy said, by the way, and you should have seen how his face turned. In other words, we are saying that we cannot finish numbering, isn't it? We know numbers run up to infinity. Of course, your money will look small if you compare it with another person's money of a bigger number, isn't it? Your money will look small if you spend it without a plan. Your money will look small if you are trapped in debt like I was. You even hate your workplace. If you get yourself to where I was, please never get there. Because I had gotten to a point where every end month, I hate myself. And I hate the job I do. Because I don't see the fruits. I don't feel the fruits. Not because they don't pay me. They pay me. But I had gotten to a level where the interest that my Shylocks need from me every month, interest alone, was more than double my net pay. Interest alone. So that means my salary comes, nalipa interest. Tuko tunawaita watoto. So unalipa watoto. And then I have to borrow some more. And because I have a suit, and those Shylocks love lending to people in the financial sector and people in disciplined sectors, because they know that you could lose your job if any of the checks you give them were to bounce. So you will do anything to make sure that you finance your account when the check needs to be banked. Borrow some more to complete interest repayment. Then I would need to borrow so that my family would survive. Don't get there. When I came up with this reality, I had not seen its weight until some things started happening. One day I was invited to speak in a chama, some investment grouping. And they were having issues with some defaulters and things like those, and they wanted me to help them come up with something. Then I overheard someone who was seated behind me saying that he is traveling to the village the next day to build his house. So after my presentation, there is a guy who follows me and tells me, Mwalimu, if you hear of a good job, please let me know. I hear this voice and I remember this is the voice that is going to build a house. And I ask him, are you not the one who's going to build a house? The guy tells me, yes, I am the one. Where I work, I earn a salary of 2,000 shillings, not per day, not per hour, per month. How many of us would take a job of 2,000 per month? Your main job, not a side hustle. None of us. This is not a story of the 70s. It's not a story of the 80s. It's a story of the 2000s. Why was this statement powerful? A guy who has been earning a salary of 2,000 shillings is traveling home tomorrow to build a house. When he said that statement, pictures of people who have literally shed tears in my pre-retirement conversations flashed my head. I have been in pre-retirement conversations where people confess, Coach, I am worried. I am going to retire next year, but I don't even have a grass-thatched house to call my own. And I know you know these stories. You have seen people who have retired and they get more confused after retirement because they did not prepare where they were going after retirement. And many of those people were earning many multiples of 2,000 shillings every month. But here is someone who has pulled a house out of a salary of how much? 2,000. That story looked like fiction. So I had to make this guy my friend. I sat down with him. My head is usually a bit mathematical. The numbers need to agree. So I sat down with him for him to break it down for me how he did it. And it made sense. I did not stop there. I also have traveled to touch the house. It may not be a permanent house, it's a semi-permanent house. But that house befits this guy. You cannot compare the confidence he walks into his compound with a person who is retiring next year and they are worried they don't even have a grass-touched house. You cannot compare. I think I've also shared that story on my YouTube page. You can follow up the details. I've broken it down, how he was able to do it. So, I'm not sharing this to ask you if you have a house. I'm not sharing this to ask you how much money you earn or how many multiples of 2,000 shillings you earn. But I usually share this to ask you, how many dreams are you sitting on because you're waiting for enough money, for big money? And how much is this big money and when is it coming? And who promised you? In other words, ladies and gentlemen, let us learn to start doing something with our money, the one that we currently have. As we wait and pray and hope and work for more, can we be doing something with what is currently in our hands? I hope that makes sense. The last reality I want to share with us, on the list of the 7 is usually the 7th reality. And it says that money is your right. Money is your right. Money is your right. The reason I brought this up is because I have also had very many of us saying very disabling things. I'm sure you've heard people say, pesa iko na wenyewe. Pesa iko na wenyewe. Biashara iko na wenyewe. Why can't you become one of the wenyewes? Why? Let me tell you how crippling that statement is. The moment you open your mouth to say, pesa iko na wenyewe, you have removed yourself from the picture of financial success. Wewe hauko, iko na wenyewe. And then you wonder why your things are not adding up. The words you speak upon yourself. We know the power of words. We need to check our vocabulary about money. Very important. Don't normalize brokenness. And please do not confuse between humility and poverty. They are not the same. They are not the same. All right, so I was trying to speak to our minds, albeit briefly. So like I said, from the brief, there were two segments to this conversation. The first segment was about our behavior around money. The second segment is a practical segment about the times that we are living in now. And that is the segment I want us to move to. And that is the segment I call Surviving Tough Economic Times. I don't know if you are in a tough economic time. I don't know. I don't even know if we are in a tough economic time as a society. What I know is that our money stories are different. There is someone who is hearing for the first time that people are saying we are in a tough economic time. There's someone who is actually learning right now where we are here. There's someone who is wondering, why is this guy talking about tough economic times? Don't worry. Whether you are facing tough economic times or not, this conversation is going to be beneficial to all of us. If you're not there, you might put some measures in place so that you delay getting there if it's a must that you get there, or you avoid getting there altogether. So are you ready for some other practical conversation? This conversation was revealed to me in the wake of COVID-19, when realities came to us that people could actually lose jobs left, right, and center. And it was actually possible for someone to wake up not knowing what will happen the next minute, not knowing what their family will eat at lunchtime or in the evening. And so there needed to be an answer. How do we begin to respond to situations such as those ones? And that's when this conversation came, and I want us to just have a moment to make this very practical to ourselves. As we go through this session, please look at yourself. Look at your own household. Bring your life on the table or the pad that you're using to write and examine it. This is your conversation. I did not come today to speak to a group. I came to speak to you, the individual that is here. I love pictures and stories. The picture that you can see is giving a big story. There is someone who is speaking to their salary, their income. And very many of us, if not all, have asked our income that question. Why are you not growing up? All your peers seem to have grown up. And who are the peers of your salary? The price of fuel, the price of bread, the price of unga, and lately the price of cooking oil. Who would have thought cooking oil would become golden? I passed through some village recently, and the elders in that village are beginning to consider admitting cooking oil as part of the items that can be used for bride price. It's a storm. And the beautiful thing about storms is that they come and go. I'm yet to read about a storm that lasted forever. They come and go. But the question is, when this storm goes, will it leave you alive or will it sweep you with it as it goes? So the things we want to talk about, and that's why I was telling you, Reverend, thank you so much for laying the background for me, because I have an easier ground to sail through. We are reflecting about measures that would help us to ensure that as the storm goes, it leaves us alive. How do we navigate this season? I ask you a personal question. Like I said, this is now a personal conversation. Is your income strained? In other words, are you going through a tough economic season? Are you finding things a bit difficult? It's a question for you to answer yourself. But in the event that you don't know, I want to help you see whether probably your income might be struggling. Are you ready to know whether you might be struggling? Okay, we say this is very personal now. So I want us to do a little activity, a very little activity. I'm happy that you have a piece of paper and pen. So I want you to develop something like what you can see on the screen. Don't look for a ruler. I will not come marking the straightness of the lines. Just have a column for number, a column for yes, and a column for no. And then the numbers are 1 up to 10. So this is what I'll be doing. I will read for us and I will even display the question. If your answer to the question is yes, you tick yes. If your answer to the question is no, you tick no. Are we together? It's as simple as that. But I know where your worry is coming from. My neighbor is looking at my answers. I have that figured out, don't worry. Now this is what you can do. You can choose to decide that your yes will represent no, and your no will represent yes. With this declaration, no one in this room knows what you are doing at all. You can actually now display. Because no one knows whether your yes is truly yes or your yes is no. Are we together? So don't worry about your neighbor. So at the end of the exercise, we expect to have something like what you can see to the right. You will have some ticks, the side of yes, and some ticks, the side of no. So are we set? All right, then breathe in. And breathe out. Right. So let the rubber begin to meet the road. Number one, personal reflection. Number one, is your monthly expenditure often bigger than your monthly income? So I want you to look at this month, the last 2, 3, 4 months. If you look at the comparison between your expenditure and your income, do you realize that most times the expenditure seems to be bigger than your income? Please tick yes or confuse your neighbor appropriately. Number two, is your monthly income struggling to meet your basic needs as you would like? The key word there is as you would like. Might be meeting, but it's not meeting as you would like. Tick appropriately or from one source, but at least one of your debt is in arrears of more than one cycle. What do I mean? You're listening to me and you took some money from your brother or your sister and you told them, I will return after 1 week. As you listen to me, you've done 2 weeks and beyond. Or you have any other loan, or maybe your Sacco loan. Any of them has not been repaid for 2 months and beyond. Please tick yes or no appropriately. Number 4, do you often pay most of your bills later than required? If you live in a rented house, your landlord has said the deadline is 5th. But if you look at last month, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, you realize you've been paying later than the 5th. Sometimes you have to craft interesting stories like I used to do those days. Sometimes you have to start explaining to your landlord that one of your signatories to the check flew to South Africa before they signed your check. And you and I know that you'll never get paid using physical checks. Please tick appropriately and confuse your neighbors. Number 5, have you become a frequent borrower of short-term debt? Short-term debt is debt that came to help us during emergency situations. Only. Short-term debt is salary advance. Short-term debt is mobile app loans. Short-term debt is the MBBilia that we will be launching today. Short-term debt is the soft loans you pick from your friends. Short-term debt is the Shylock loans that I used to pick back in the day. Short-term debt is your credit card. You know the debt you pick, you repay in a month or 2 months' time or 3 months' time in a short period of time. They came to help you and they are very useful, especially when you find yourself flat-footed and you have a situation. And I guess that is why many of you have been asking the Sacco why we do not have a product like that one. But now that it is coming, and you realize that you have gotten to a level where you pay this minute, and then you breathe in, you breathe out. You're giving the system a grace period to reorganize itself, to return the limit. So if you look back, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, there is no single month you have broken that chain. Tick yes, tick no appropriately. Number 6. You see, I'm mentioning this because there is a reason why the Sacco has all these products. As an astute borrower, you have to master how to mix the products that you have according to the need that you have. That's why we will not use asset-based finance when you are looking for money to buy a packet of unga for the evening when you don't have money to feed your family. It will be hilarious. You have come here to say, can I get an asset loan, but don't buy me the car, give me the money because I don't have unga. You getting what I'm saying, right? If you want to go far with debt, please learn how to match the type of credit and the need that you have. Number 6, do you recently find it difficult saving money? Maybe you used to save money easily in the past, but maybe now you're finding it a bit difficult. Or even where you do, you find yourself doing it with a very heavy heart. Sometimes when the Sacco suggests that we increase our monthly savings, I have been in some of those AGMs where that is suggested, and you know how we want to behave during that time. I used to be a victim because I'm also a member of a Sacco. And sometimes they would urge us. I remember back in the day, we would have a minimum of 1,000. And then they tell us, please, can we increase the minimum to 1,500? And we would fight. Later on, when I look back, I'm laughing at myself. Why were we behaving as though the Sacco was eating our money? The 1,500 you are adding, who are you adding it for? Myself. Yourself, isn't it? So, if you find yourself in that state, please tick yes or tick no appropriately. Number 7. Have you recently been tempted to break into your savings account? Maybe you had saved some money, and your head has been entertaining thoughts of breaking, or you have even broken as we speak. Please confuse your neighbor appropriately, but answer that question. We said it's a personal story today, isn't it? So speak to yourself. Number 8. Have you recently sold any of your assets for personal use? On this one, I give you the power to define assets whichever way you want. But that thing you have called your asset, that you bought for some other reason, but recently you sold so that you could use the money to buy food, you could use the money to pay school fees, you could use the money to fuel your car, you could use the money to service it, you could use the money to do any other thing that you usually do every other day. If you have done that in the recent past, please tick yes or no appropriately. Number 9, are your current conversations filled with lamentations and cries and complaints of how hard things are? So, take yourself to that corner. Revisit your conversations with your friends, with your spouses, with your colleagues. Look at the kind of conversations you have. Do you realize lately you have been complaining a lot about how difficult things are economically? Tick yes, tick no, appropriately. Lastly, there are many indicators. I just pulled 10 to help us do this activity. Have you lately reduced or cut off your contribution in social matters? For example, fundraisers, church offerings, donations, parental support, and things like those. Have you recently reduced your contribution in such matters, or you even stopped altogether? Sometimes I also sit with church leaders, and I can also feel how they also feel the situation as it is. Because when you feel it, yeses and beyond. How many? 4 ticks on the yes side and beyond. Whichever was your yes side. If your no was your yes side, or your yes was your yes side. If you have 4 and above, it's a wake-up call that you need to pay attention to your financial situation. Are we together at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So that was a personal story. You can flip that page so that you don't keep looking at it. Then we can begin to think about situations. So when we talk about a tough economic season or tough times, we are simply describing a situation where the expenditure side of the beam balance is heavier than the income side. Initially, probably the income side was heavy. And then at some point, things balanced out. And then maybe you've gotten to a point where the expenditure side is beginning to be heavy. When that happens, we say your income is struggling. Your income is straining. It carries a heavier burden. It is working so hard to pull the load. It's like a trolley that was being pulled by a heavy vehicle. And then you remove it and you want to hook the same trolley to your small car. You've really overloaded it. That's when we say you are facing tough economic times. So like I said, we will face this in varying proportions. Some people will be hearing it for the first time in this meeting. Some people have been feeling it. Some people have been feeling it differently. I don't know where you are, but like I said, this is your conversation. Different things will make your income to struggle. For example, when you have a job loss, when you lose your job, God forbid, then automatically your income has been cut, isn't it? That means the expenditure side will hit the floor in that scale. Pay cuts. And we saw a lot of this when COVID came. Reduced business for those that are in business. We have also seen collapse in business. When that happens and that was your source of income, there is trouble. Sickness. If you've had a sick member of your family, especially prolonged sickness, you know that sickness has power to deflate your financial balloon. You may have prepared very well. You may have thought you're okay. But when you have prolonged sickness, that thing has the power to eat your financial muscle bit by bit. Until tomorrow when you call for a rambe, people are wondering whether you are truly saying the truth or something is wrong. But those who understand will know. But when you have prolonged sickness, it can affect it. Sometimes death will also affect your financial story, will make your income to strain, depending on how it has happened. Sometimes it's the death of the breadwinner of the family. That means that family automatically begins to struggle financially. Or sometimes it is death that has left a huge bill behind. Sometimes it's the rising cost of living, like what we are facing now. So your income might have been big some time back. You used to look at it and even wonder. You would actually spend and it would remain. But today you are wondering, where is my money going? Probably you have maintained the same expenditure items you used to have. But because the prices have gone up, the spending power has gone down. And that list can be long, can also include things like court cases. If you have prolonged court cases, you know they can also affect your financial muscle. So what do we do about this? Before we pick what to do about it, I want us to do our last activity. What I want to do in this activity is to convert us into financial experts. And that's how much I believe in you. Each one of you is an expert. You may not have seen it, but I want to help you to see it. You may not be doing it commercially like I'm doing, but I want you to see it. I want us to do an activity, and this is a practical story. I call it the story of John. John is one of us. It's a true life story. I do one-on-one coaching, apart from the trainings here. And one-on-one coaching on different sides of money matters, including what I call the debt clinic. For those that have been pushed to the wall in matters debt, they are where I was, or even worse. I try to encourage you not to think about committing suicide. Sometimes we can talk about these things and you can figure things out. If I were to show you my inbox messages, sometimes you want to cry for this world. The messages of suicide that are coming in are worrying. People confessing that, coach, I've reached the end. I want to call it quits. And that's why we must talk about these things. So John is one of my clients, and he allowed me to use his story for classroom learning. After COVID-19 came, John and wife faced a situation where their income was strained. And they came for coaching, and I've journeyed with them for a while, and they're now doing well, and we thank God. But I want us to learn from his story. When they came the first time, I told them to bring me a list of their financial story items, a list of how they spend their money, a list of their income sources, and things like those. And this is what they gave me. And I want you to study this very keenly. Don't worry, I will read for you if you are back there and probably you are not able to see. John and wife had a combined family income of 100,000. John was earning 60,000, the wife was earning 40,000. They were living in Roysambu, and both of them were working on Thika Road along a straight line. That means, for example, if one of them was working at Utali, maybe another one was working at Muthaiga or Pangani. So they are working along a straight line. They had 2 vehicles when I met them. Both the vehicles were on loan. They had 1 child aged 2 years old. This is the first list that they brought. Even though later I challenged it and they brought another list that was bigger than this. They used to do their shopping at the junction, 15,000 bob per month. They used to pay rent for their 3-bedroomed house, 40,000 shillings. They used to spend 12,000 on fuel. The wife used to do her beauty in Kilimani at 7,000 per month. Home internet, 20 Mbps, 6,000. Gas, electricity and water, 5,000. Telephone, 6,000. Paid TV, 5,000. Food, 15,000. Clothing, 5,000 every month. Mobile loans, repayment, 20,000. That was the first list that they gave me. I want you to do 2 things. Number 1, I want you to comment on John's life situation. What do you think about how John was living his life? And number 2, I want you to advise John. If John approached you and gave you this situation, what would you tell him? So I want us to start with the first one. Comment on John's life situation. Very quickly, we are talking. Yes. Yes.
Number 1.
Yes.
He doesn't need a 3-bedroom house.
He does not need a 3-bedroomed house. Right.
They don't need 2 vehicles. They're on the same.
They don't need 2 vehicles.
When the 2 vehicles they're on the same route.
Right. So how would you describe how John was living?
Extravagant.
Extravagant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. He was living around Thika Road, but in his mind, he wanted to live in Kilimani or somewhere there. Okay, thank you. Yes? Living beyond his means. Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the usual expense that he has listed there.
Yes.
It's beyond what the family earns. So
Good observation.
I don't see any saving for the family. So in
Wow.
case of an emergency, that family is done.
Quisha. Thank you for that observation. Yes. The rental house is more than 30% of his salary. Yes. They don't need 2 vehicles. Yes.
I'm not seeing anywhere in the expenses he has invested somewhere.
Where he has invested. Yes. Yes, it is not clear how they're covering up the deficit. And that's why I said when they came, I challenged this list and I told them, I contest the list and I also contest your loan situation. And when they brought the refined list, it was very true. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, last observation before we start advising John. Yes, at the back. They are living in the now. The YOLO mentality we were talking about. You only live once, isn't it? One question I keep asking the people who tell me about YOLO is, why are you alive today? Yesterday you told us you only live once. Why are you living twice now? Help me ask them that next time. Now let's advise John. Let's advise John. Yes.
You have talked about the saloon, and I think going to Kilimani is not so far. I think there is also a better maybe beauty shop or salon near the place where they are living.
Thank you, fantastic. Yes, that is great. Very good advice. So that they need to change the location of doing their hair. Fantastic. Yes. We are advising John now. Yes.
I don't see any saving in that.
So you would tell them to start saving. Wow, thank you. The question they would ask you is, save from where? Good observation. Yes. We are now advising John. Yes. Avoid the monthly clothing expenditure. Yes, good observation. Instead of DSTV, just buy us. He actually had a smart TV. Good observation. Thank you. Yes, we are advising John.
Sit down with your wife and budget before spending.
Sit down with your wife and budget before spending. Okay? Wow. Interesting. I told you, you guys are financial experts here. Yes? Reduce on expenses and increase investment. The only thing he would want to do is, how do I reduce? Which ones do I reduce from this list? Yes? Thank you. Yes? Someone was saying something? Yes? Clear is debt. How? Okay. Thank you. You have another addition? They can use one car. Wow. Thank you. Even the internet. Yes? Reduce rent. Can you clap for yourselves? You can see you're experts, right? Because you have lived life. As long as someone has lived life, life, we don't have one script leading all of us, isn't it? That's why I said you start from the point of self-awareness. Knowing yourself. When you know yourself, it's easier for you to begin to carve a path for yourself. Allow me to say the following. The story of John is the story of very many of us seated in this room today. That story of John. Number two, it is very easy for us to see what is not working in the life of John and fail to see what is not working in our own lives. So today we have an opportunity to begin to see what might not be working right in our own lives. So are you ready for that journey? So what I want us to do, I want to share with us some 10 tips. There are very many. I've actually written a book on this. So I just want to pull out some 10 tips on how we can begin to survive tough economic times. But as I mentioned these tips, I am simply trying to open your thinking. Remember, these are not blanket tips. It is for you to customize them. If there is one thing that this season is calling for, is flexibility, is creativity. We have to become creative in the way we spend money, in the way we handle money. And that's why the man of God in the morning was saying we must be ready to adjust. We cannot continue spending money the same way we were spending when we had more money than we needed. And now you realize you don't even have enough like you would want. The first place to start when you discover that your income is struggling. Remember the exercise we've done, the yes and no. It has left you somewhere, isn't it? So that you don't hang, because you've discovered something about yourself. The first place to start is the place of acceptance. Accept your situation. Be real with yourself. When I say accept your situation, I don't mean you fold your arms and say, fate has dealt me this way. There is nothing I can do. Let me just sit and wait and see. You will see stars if you sit and wait and see. Acceptance means you are coming to terms with your reality. You are convincing your mind that, hey, things have changed. This is not the story as it used to be. It is life unusual. You are speaking to yourself. You've called yourself to that meeting. You are acknowledging that this is part of life's storms. The storm has suddenly visited you. You used to hear it from other people. Like I said, there's someone who is learning about it today, isn't it? Maybe some time back people used to say that they were going through a rough patch and you are wondering. But maybe now you are there. You accept, acknowledge it as part of the storms of life. But these storms will come and go. But they need to leave you alive, like I said. You are acknowledging that it's not a finality. You can bounce back. And as children of God, we have hope, isn't it? That we can bounce back. If we are able to think right and act right. At that stage, you are also accepting and acknowledging that some changes must be done. Some changes will need to be made in the meantime. As we wait for the storm to go, what changes will I be making? So what I usually do is I divide these tips into two. The first part of the tips are aimed at addressing you and protecting you. They are speaking to you, the person who handles the money. And then the second category are now the what we call the mechanical tips. You know, the mechanics of the money management. So the first three tips, I will be speaking to you, the person. So the first thing you do is to accept. Sit down, look at yourself, look at the yes and no, and tell yourself, the truth is, I am not where I'm supposed to be. The truth is, things are not how they used to be. I need to make some changes. Number two, once you accept, please establish your current position. When you know where you are, and you figure out where you would want to be, it is easier for you to start thinking about the route. But if you don't know where you are, it becomes a bit challenging. So begin by establishing your current position. Where are you today? And I want to suggest two positions that you need to think about. The first one is your financial position. Financially, what are your realities today? Well, this is the homework I'm giving us when we get home. Where am I today financially? Allow me to give us a few parameters financially. For example, you may think about your income situation. Remind yourself, what is my income today? Put a number to it. You know the number that explains your income. Remind yourself, this is my income. Number two, you can think about your expenditure. How have you been spending your money? Or what are your immediate needs? If you got money today or end of the month, what will you be spending your money on? Remind yourself, these are our usual expenditure items in this house. Now that begins to give you some picture of whether the income that you have can support this list that you have. Number three, you can think about your debt situation. Who do you owe money as we speak? How have you been paying them? With the storm as it is, are you able to continue paying them that way? That's why I loved when the CEO mentioned that part of the things we'll be doing as a Sacco is to also help you with restructure, especially where the new happenings in our income have affected the third rule. That's a good thing. Okay? Another thing in the world of money that you may think you may need to face is your savings position. Remind yourself, how much money have I saved? For whatever reason, for a rainy day, for investment, whatever it is. If you have zero, tell yourself, my savings are zero. It's a good place to start from. You're facing your own realities. You know, one thing I love about the stories of money is that they are personal. And when I say personal, if you are running a family entity, that your family is the personal we are talking about. That you don't have to do what I'm doing. I don't have to do what you're doing. I don't need to show you what I am doing. It's a personal story. Your savings position. You may also need to remind yourself about your investment position. Have I invested? If you haven't, tell yourself, my investment portfolio is zero. Now, those numbers, those realities will help you as you begin to think about navigating the season that you are in. When you have those realities. The second aspect of your current position I want you to think about is your emotional position. Allow me to expand it by calling it your mental wellness position. Look, when times are tough financially, it is not news that you get affected mentally. So you need to evaluate yourself. Ask yourself, how am I feeling about the current reality? If you're stressed about it, tell yourself, I think I am stressed about it. I think I'm getting depressed about this. And if you're operating from a family level, you can also be able to observe your partner and see how the current situation is affecting them. To be able to gauge. When I was going through my struggles, one of the things I realized I was quickly losing was my memory. God has blessed me with a wonderful memory. Sometimes I recall things that when I tell my parents, they wonder whether and how I was able to recollect at that age. But when I was going through those struggles, sometimes I would forget things that happened in the morning. Kwa sababu akili yangu ina process answers. I am not a normal person. I promised people on Monday by 2 nitakuwa nimekusort. Monday imefika. 10 inafika. 11 inafika. Sometimes when I'm teaching debt management, I like saying, if you want your time to fly, borrow recklessly. If you think the year is boring, it's moving very slowly, just borrow recklessly. You will see how fast time can fly. You know, when you're borrowing money, you don't remember that this is a loan. Sometimes you're excited. 30 days run very fast and deductions have loaded. That's when people discover, aya, kumbe ilikuwa loan. Okay? So you must know where you are. How is this thing affecting you? Some people are anxious. They've had times are tough. They may not be feeling the toughness, but they are now anxious. What if it comes knocking at our door? What if one day we are not able to pay school fees? That anxiety might begin to affect you. Once you have faced those realities, number 3, I'm still speaking to you, the person. You can opt to seek for help. You can opt to seek for help. But before you seek for help, you must know the kind of help you need, isn't it? That's why we have done number 1 and number 2. So that you are aware of the kind of help you might be needing. If you go to look for help blindly, then no one will help you because even you yourself, you don't know the kind of help you are looking for. Sometimes you need professional help. Maybe you realize this thing is stressing you up. You are anxious. You can't concentrate. It's eating you up. You may need to speak to a professional. And we must normalize speaking to professionals. It is not taboo. It is not outlawed. You know, mental wellness is not the absence of madness. Okay? It's your ability to perform well in all the areas of you as a person. So if you realize this thing is affecting you, you might need to speak to someone. Sometimes you might need another person to help you structure your finances. Because sometimes when you go through this pressure, your eyes stop seeing the obvious. You see the way we look at the story of John, and we're wondering, why is John behaving this way? When you look at your own situation, and another person looks at it, sometimes they also ask you questions, and you are also wondering. Sometimes you may need financial help. Financial help, yes. Sometimes the kind of help you need is money. We might be seated here, we are smiling, we are happy, but you know very well, as you go back home today, you do not have food for the evening. These are realities we face every day. You know, the world of money is interesting, and the one-on-one coaching has really taught me a lot. Because sometimes I sit with people whose positions in society, if we were to mention, then people would wonder whether they came for a true session or they came to test you. But when you sit and dig deeper, and you begin to have a candid heart-to-heart conversation, you discover that money stories, as long as you are reckless with money, you will face the consequences. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how much money you earn. So you might be seated here and you know very well, in the evening you don't have food. You have a choice to keep quiet about it and go home and it is eating you, and you're thinking about the children you're going to face. And they saw you leave home in the morning, and they are hopeful that dad or mom will come and he or she will be carrying something. And you know you don't have it. That might affect you greatly. Or you have a choice to also confide in a friend, and that's why I told you whatever is going to be launched here will be very useful. In moments like those ones, that's when you remember that we have our M Biblia that can sort you, and you go home and put a smile in the faces of your children as you wait for end month. We must normalize talking. Okay? When I went through those struggles of mine, I always thank my friends. There are some friends I picked and I spoke to them and I told them, in the event I reach out to you, because I'm going through a journey, don't ask me questions. And I thank God for them. They stood with me. And I remember when I was also quitting employment to start building my consulting business, I also picked a few friends and I told them, I'm going into the murky waters of business. And before my brand can be built to a certain level, I am not sure how long that will take. Maybe the money I have and the sources I have will have dried out. If I ever reach out and I tell you I don't have unga for my family, don't ask me questions. And yes, those moments came in the course of building this business. And they stood with me and I thanked them. And this is the point where I like saying, make friends before you need them. Make friends before you need them. We were told in the morning that we need to be nice to people, isn't it? Talk nicely to people. Make those relationships before you need them. It is harder when you are looking for someone to help you, and that's the first time you start talking to people and you've never been talking to people. You've seen people say, salimianga watu, something happens, isn't it? Something happens. Sometimes you might just need spousal help. Spousal help might come in the form of moral support. Every time I'm doing couple sessions, and many times I do them with my wife, I like praising her unashamedly because of something she did when I was going through that struggle moment. During that moment, I was doing what ordinary men will do. Tunakanyagia your story. You know, I don't want to be ashamed, so why should I tell her what I'm going through? And I have borrowed to those depths that I've told you, and I'm still hiding things. So how am I hiding? I have to keep borrowing some more, so that when some demand is made at home, I can be able to meet it, so that she does not know. But when I'm teaching about what I call the stages of the trap of debt, there's a stage I call the lock stage, When you get to the lock stage, the last stage, no one wants to pick your calls. You've borrowed from everyone and defaulted. It's that stage where people contemplate suicide because they misinterpret that to be rejection. So I got to that stage. And one day I marshaled energy. And many times when I speak to in men's conferences, I give them this secret because it worked for me. One day I marshaled the energy. It was a big risk. She had the choice to leave me because it's not interesting to be near a man who really is that messed up. And I still remember where we were. We were in a matatu. I still remember the exact spot. Every day when I drive and the days I happen to pass those particular places, when I get to that spot, something hits me. Because that was the spot where I looked at her, I got her attention, and I told her, look, the truth is, I am struggling. I am messed up. I have borrowed silly. We've been living a lie. It was a shock to her. And especially revealing those numbers that I have told you. I usually don't mention the amounts. I don't want to startle you even more. But I mention the numbers because every number is a pressure point. But this is why I respect her. After telling her all that, she breathed in. She breathed out. I waited for the results. Maybe she would have said, nishukishe hapo. She looked at me and she told me, don't worry, we are in this together. I don't know, but that statement was liberating. I share that statement whenever we are handling couples, whenever I'm teaching about money, especially in churches, because I have seen what it has done to families. Every time when we are speaking to couples and ladies are asking her, why did you stick with a man who was like that? And she would say, there is some potential I saw in him, the one that has made you to invite him to speak to you. But that statement was liberating because that day she was not working. She did not have a job or money she was able to give me to pay. Remember, we need money to pay debt, isn't it? But that statement made me to be a free man. I no longer had to hide, to go and pick calls from the toilet and leave her wondering, who is this that has called? Maybe this guy is having some other affairs out there. Now the guys would call me and I would tell her, this is one of them. And she also started helping me because sometimes my head would be lost. And she would tell me, you can tell this one this way. Sometimes she would tell me, can we go and talk to this one together? And it worked. So sometimes you might need moral support from your spouse. I hope I'm making some sense. Let me flip the coin and speak to you who someone will come seeking for help from. If someone ever takes time to speak to you about what they're going through, please allow me to suggest the following. Number one, listen to them. And listen attentively. That's not the time for you to interject. To tell them, oh, I also have a story. Especially when we know the story is going in the direction of money, we have a tendency of wanting to cut it short. If you had a story, you would have said it. Allow them to finish. Even if you know you are not able. That allowing them to open up eases a lot in them. You have helped them, you don't know. Many times in the one-on-one coaching level, there are many people who book sessions and they come. They came so that we talk about money, but when they come and they start pouring out, they start talking about other things. And I allow them. And there are people who will pour out and they finish and they say, look, I will book another session for money. I feel better. Let me go. Because the world is devoid of people who can listen without judging, without broadcasting. If someone speaks to you about their problems, as much as you can help, please help. Please encourage them. And from a Christian perspective, please pray with them and pray for them. It helps them know that it was not a criminal offense for them to open up. Because sometimes we are our own enemies. When we hear someone has committed suicide, that's when we remember. And why didn't she speak? Why didn't he talk? And we were here. But what do we do when someone tries to talk to us? We start telling everyone, huyo jamaa usimuone hivyo bwana. Hizo masuti zake ni masuti tu. Number 4. Now we come to the technical bits. Please draw a new budget. Like we said, you cannot continue spending your money the way you used to do when it was enough to take care of all your needs. As you draw a new budget, please begin listing necessities from non-necessities. When you list your basics, it will give you a chance to compare the income that we said you need to remind yourself how it looks, and the list of your necessities. Now you can see, is it able to take care of my immediate basic needs? So that you know whether you have anything left for you to admit any of those other luxuries, if you must admit them. You may also begin to cut back on some luxuries. That's the adjustment that we have been talking about. You can also save from some necessities. The fact that something is in the side of basic needs does not mean you must spend on it in the way you have been spending on it. We all know food is basic, isn't it? But not every food item is basic. We also have non-basic, basic needs. For example, when you had a lot of money, which food is luxurious? You used to eat pizza every Tuesday or several times a week when you had money, enough money, or a lot of money. But now that your money is struggling, you can remind yourself, much as pizza is in the category of food, it is also a luxurious food. You can choose to say, instead of every Tuesday, I can do it twice a month, I can do it once a month. We said this is your story, not our story, okay? So you know how painful the pinch is, so adjust accordingly. Sometimes you may need to switch to what I call the bare bones budget. Bare bones budget is after you have listed your necessities. When you compare it with your income, you realize, hey, it cannot even take care of all the necessities. So what do? You go into survival mode. You go to a budget that can just keep you afloat until circumstances change. That means even from the list of basics, there are some things you might need to mute or reduce or think about alternatives. And we'll be saying a bit about that shortly. But draw a new budget. If you are someone who earns irregular income, so for example, you have basic income, then you have commission and things like those. As you are budgeting during a tough moment, please do not include the irregular part. Sometimes you can budget using the irregular, just because last month you got commission of this amount. And then you start pegging your expenditure at that level, then this month the commission does not come. That might throw you into imbalance. But if you excluded them and the money came, it gives you more power. You can save some more. You can do some bulky shopping to cover you in the days when money will not, or such money will not have come. Number 5, avoid wastefulness. In this season, more than ever before, avoid wastefulness. Avoid wastefulness. Avoid wastefulness in how you spend. Some time back, there is a video that I released, and it made rounds with humility around the globe. And I was saying, you have some families who cook food fit for 16 people when there are only 4 in their household. And they keep throwing away the remainder as leftovers. You have just wasted food for another 3 days or 3 sessions. In this season, be careful not to be wasteful. Wastefulness is an enemy of financial stewardship. Some people have got duplicated items. If you look at the story of John, and in that same video I was saying, some people have internet that can power an office with 100 employees. but there are only 2 in their house. If you examine how they are using internet, they can easily make do with the smallest package without knowing the difference. What was John doing with 20 Mbps? And I remember asking him, what do you do? Do you know what 20 Mbps can do? Okay? Look at the duplications. Sometimes when you come for one-on-one coaching, sometimes I help you to do an audit into your own life. For example, we look at your living room. If you look at the living room of John, there was a smart TV. Okay, I asked John, what is the type of TV you have? A smart TV. Okay, then I start this way. When do you watch TV in your house? Jioni tu nikitoka job. Mostly 9 o'clock, I watch news. Okay. Which channel do you watch news from? Local channels. Okay. Do you realize the TV you have came with the capacity to decode local signals free of charge? So why are you paying premium package? Pay TV, 5,000, 6,000. I wanted to watch football. No problem. When was the last time you watched football in your house? Hata wewe unajua, ball inaingianga ukiwa na marafiki. So why didn't you think about that when you were making the decision? And one thing I tell people like John, who have paid TV premium package and they are not using, is that every month you are donating. Not even to charity, not even to the needy, to an able company. You are donating to them 5,000, 6,000 every month because you feel you are very philanthropic. And on this other end, you are crying that times are tough. I hope you are seeing what you are saying. These adjustments are just things you think through. So I'm just trying to help us as we look into our living rooms. Number 6, you need to change your shopping habits. Change your shopping habits. You need to learn to avoid spending more to save less. Yes, there are people who spend more trying to save less. And recently, I've used the example of people who drive. You know, we have to change how we think. There is someone who lives here, where I am. They want to go to work, so work is there. But someone has told them that there's a petrol station. We know fuel is now expensive. A station that sells fuel 1 shilling less. Uko nyuma. So, we wake up in the morning. Because we are financially savvy, let us drive uko nyuma with fuel. Then we come back here. Then we start our journey. If that person told you that, it might make some sense. But let's think about it. The average car has a fuel tank averagely of 45 liters, 50 liters. Most of the vehicles people drive. Do you realize if that gas station is selling 1 shilling less, you can only save a maximum of 50 bob if you filled the tank? Unfortunately, we don't even go to fill the tank. So we are not thinking about the fuel we are using to go and to come back. I hope you are seeing. That's when we say you are spending more to save less. So just think through your choices of shopping. Take advantage of discounts as much as you can. You can also start buying some things at source. Those of you that travel, unapita mahali wameweka viazi, stop by and buy from the farmers. You may get them at a better price. You might even get them more fresh than you would elsewhere. Please do budgeted shopping. This is not that season where you enter the supermarket and you're pushing that trolley whichever way you want and you're putting in whatever you find. You know, we do what I call shopping by shelf. So you move by shelves and ask, what can I pick this shelf? If your income is screaming that it is struggling, this is not that time. You can also negotiate for favorable plans. We must learn some negotiation skills. And I'm not talking about bargaining, but there's nothing wrong with bargaining. If you can bargain, well and good. As long as you don't get to a level where, there's a level where you bargain until Even you know this item sells at 150. You have pushed the guy to sell you at 100, and you're still pushing until you make the guy reveal his business secrets. The guy tells you, I bought it at 98. I'm only getting 2 shillings. So reasonable bargaining is fine, no problem. But I'm talking about negotiating. Let me give you an example. What I have done personally. Many of you buy water from water refilling points somewhere. Okay? Maybe they refill a 20-liter bottle, maybe at 200 or 250. 250 or 300, depending with where you buy. Have you thought about, because if that person is stable, if that shop is there, has been there, if you went and told them, I have realized I use 8 bottles in a month. If I gave you the money for the 8 bottles now, so that my people will just be coming to pick, or you'll just be bringing, but you give me a discount, what will you say? You'll be shocked that they will give you a discount. I told that to my guy, and every month I save about 500 bob. I said this season calls for creativity. Calls for creativity. So yes, he has chance to spend my money up front, but I also get to benefit from a lower price. Are we together? At some point, I did that with my barber shop. I gave them money. I told them I shave weekly, so here is the money. What discount are you giving me? They say, we'll give you this discount if you can pay us the money up front. And I paid them the money up front. But at the end of the day, there is something I've gotten out of it. I hope I'm making some sense. Sometimes you can shop around before you do the final shopping. If you have time, shop around before you do the final shopping to find out whether there are better alternatives somewhere. Number 7, you can look for cheaper alternatives. But this is not where you compromise quality. Here is how it comes. Chances are high when you had a lot of money, you were not really thinking about how you were spending your money. So chances are high you were buying some things, even expensively, the same things that can be found somewhere at a cheaper price. That time you were buying convenience. But now that your income is struggling, you might look for a cheaper alternative, maybe of the same thing, or maybe a true alternative to that product that may give you the same satisfaction. So I'm not encouraging you to compromise on quality, but to check around and see what you can do. So you can look for cheaper alternatives for transport, okay, for TV, for internet, and see what works for you. That may help you. I don't know which other areas you're seeing where we can get cheaper alternatives. Yes? Yes, sir. Food, yes. You can find some cheaper sources, okay, of your food item, yes. A house, yes. In the story of John, and one thing I love about that family was their flexibility. Sometimes I sit with families and they come and they tell me, Coach, tell us anything, but please, don't touch our cars. So you're still in denial. You're not ready for this session. Okay? Of course, my work as a coach is not to dictate what you will do. Mine is just to help you open your eyes by asking you those questions. What are you doing with this pay TV? What are you, those ones. Just help you go home and think soberly. John was able to move from the 40K house to a 25K house. That was the first movement that they met. Then they sold one car, and they remained with one car, and the wife did something interesting because of the last point I will share with us here. And the wife decided to do Uber with the remaining car. So every morning she drops the husband, and she does Uber. In the evening she comes, picks the husband. They are able to bond even more than when everyone was driving their own car. That has helped them to start coming up a bit faster. You can look for cheaper alternatives for your energy as well. Number 8, do not shortchange your savings. Sometimes when we go through this difficult session, some people rush to break into the savings account. Even before you make the changes we are talking about, some people will rush to break into their accounts. Some people will rush to start even signing out of their Sacco membership during a season like this. Sometimes just because we need some money, we want to maintain life where it was. We are not ready to adjust, and therefore we need some money. That's why you remember, my savings have reached this level. Can I say I want to sign out of the Sacco? Take time. Do not shortchange your savings. Money speaks that one language. You save me today, I'll save you tomorrow. Very important. So continue saving as much as you can. Okay? Then please do not rush to liquidate. The same applies to our investments. Some people during a phase like this, they start selling their pieces of land left, right, and center because they want to maintain their lifestyle where it was. Number 9, you can learn to do some things on your own. When you had a lot of money, you would engage people to do things for you, even the simplest of things, including replacing a blown bulb in your house. When you had money, you would even call for an electric engineer, and you even ask them for their CV to replace a bulb. Can you learn to do some of those things on your own if you realize that your income is struggling? Of course, you might be wondering what will happen to the electricians. Not every one of us will do the exact same changes. And when I speak to the business community, now I give them their own tips from that particular perspective. Now, please, you can learn to do your hair for the ladies. A few things. When you had a lot of money, you would go wakubomoe, waoshe, wa-straighten, alafu sasa wafanye vile ulitaka wafanye. And when they bill you at the end of the day, they'll tell you kubomoa. They will itemize, isn't it? Kubomoa, kuosha, straighten, and then now whatever you wanted. If you are claiming that your income is struggling, you can bomoa at home. If you have children, they can be bomoaring as you do stories with them. Or even your spouse. Okay? They can bomoa you, then you can learn how to wash, and maybe you can even straighten at home. Then you go and do whatever you wanted to do. You can learn how to do some laundry on your own. When you had money, of course, you would order people around and they would be washing your clothes and things like those. But now that you're crying that your income is struggling, maybe that's an area you might need to learn how to do yourself. Some people may need to learn how to drive on their own. When you had money and you had your car or your cars, you had engaged someone to drive you around so that you can also say, I am chauffeured to work. But now you have not even paid that driver for very many months. Is it better you keep accruing his arrears of salary, or you appreciate driving yourself until things change? Think about it. Lastly, number 10, and this is where John's wife decided to do Uber, you need to think about income. All the other things we are mentioning are short-term options. But when you think about income, you are asking yourself, how else can I make another coin? The only thing that will surely cushion you in this season is if you can be able to find another way of attracting another coin. The good thing is that all of us can attract another coin if we think about it. The challenge is that many times we are interesting in the way we think. Many of us are waiting for big capital that we have not defined so that we can start a big business. And we don't know when that will come. The good thing we have reminded ourselves today that we should allow our money as it is to start doing what it can do for us today. Some of us have talents, we have gifts, we have endowments, we have skills that we can actually monetize. Some people love cooking and they talk about it. And many times I ask them, can we now commercialize this passion you have for cooking? You tell us how you bake very nice cakes. Can you be baking them and you tell us? And we will support you when we have those birthdays and those weddings and those things. And you make a coin out of it. Nothing is interesting like receiving another coin aside from your main coin. There will always be opportunities and avenues that will not jeopardize your main hustle. Don't look for avenues that will now start competing with your job. If you call your job your main hustle, think about other opportunities that do not directly compete. Otherwise, you will also suffer from conflict of interest. Okay? So you're an accountant and you work Monday to Friday and Saturday you're just at home. I call you, tell me I'm just chilling. There are very many SMEs that would want to have accounting services. Someone to help them do their returns. Someone to help them do their books. You can be doing them. A gig every other month. You can have a list of SMEs you support. That will give you another coin. The skills you offer your employer, can they be offered somewhere else? These days we have online opportunities open. What do you do with the rest of the hours? If your job takes 8 hours, what happens with the 16? Are you spending 4 of them in traffic? Can you do something else? Something else helped me a lot in my journey of regaining control during that struggle period. I started writing my books when I was still employed. By the time I was quitting, I had written 3 books. Those books and the speaking gigs, because I realized I needed some income. So I started engaging schools. When I hear heads of schools are meeting somewhere, I would go there and tell them, I speak in schools. I can help to motivate, to inspire your children in schools. And I would start getting some gigs. I would come back home with a 3K that I didn't have, a 5K that I didn't have. And that's how I started monetizing my speaking gift. So there is something that you have. Think about it, just think about it. Sometimes you can make what I call rental income. Rental income does not have to come from rental property only. Doesn't have to come from houses only. I love sharing a story of a friend of mine who I met, and his rental income was coming from renting out wheelbarrows. What? Wheelbarrows. And he started with a stock of 10 wheelbarrows. And when I was listening to that story, he had a stock of 200 wheelbarrows. Na hazikai home. And the guy gives them out that time at 50 bob per day. He just scouts people who are constructing. There's a time you want to construct and you don't need to really buy a wheelbarrow for something that will take 3 days. If someone can give you at 50, 50, 50, 150, instead of spending 5K buying a new wheelbarrow that you only use for 3 days, you would better use 150, isn't it? That's rental income. Rental income comes when you allow people to use your assets and they pay you periodically for using your assets. It doesn't have to be a physical building like we are used to. So can you come up with things like those so that when you are at your workplace, maybe something else out there is being hired out and money is coming? Options are many. Like I always do, I love saying that you can do better. You can do better. Chair, with your permission, permit me to just show you some of the books I have authored. We have a few copies at the entrance, even though we'll be leaving almost immediately. I'm speaking in another Sacco, not far from here. I have a book called Staying Financially Afloat. This is the book I was mentioning about. It's my latest book. It may not boast for more than 3 months because there's another one coming, Financial Parenting for Parents. Staying Financially Afloat is a book about the tips that we are talking about. I've just shared with you 10, but in that book I've shared, if we were to break them down and count, more than 100 tips that would help you open your mind to creativity. And I've categorized them into about 23 groups, okay, of how you can navigate this season. Each of them retails at 700 bob. There's a book called Debt is Good, and people wonder whether, from my experience, I can still say debt is good. Yes, it is good, only if you master it. That rider is very important. Only if you master it. Master it in 2 ways. One is understand how debt works before you swim deep into it. I swam deep into it those days. I didn't know how debt works. Now when I take up debt, I take it up from a very different perspective. So that book is just written to us to help us make sober borrowing decisions, so that we have a better encounter with debt. Retails at 700 bob. I have a book called Managing My Money. That book is what I would call the book that carries the foundations of money management. Begins to address your mind. The 7 realities I spoke about are covered there. Talks to you about wealth creation. How can you start creating wealth from where you are with what you have? Broken it down into what I call the focused wealth creation cycle. With those many words, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to connect with me on social media. Follow my pages on Facebook, YouTube, and every other platform. Look for Coach Roy Okonji, and I'll be glad that we can continue this conversation. Allow me to invite you tonight from 8. I host people live on Facebook. I don't take it for granted. I really appreciate. I thank God for you. Thank you once again, the Sacco leadership, for this opportunity. Someone asked where else can the books be found. If you picked that contact, that is your gateway. There's someone seated on the WhatsApp of that contact. So if you need a book, just say you need the books. For now, I will leave my assistant here as I live with the books out there, so that once you're done, because I've had a number of us saying you would want to interact with them later. So I leave him there for now, so that I dash to the other meeting, then you guys can interact with the books later. But if you have picked those contacts, then that is how easy I can be accessed. Thank you so much once again. God bless you. I would have loved to stay longer, but the other meeting is already waiting. Asante sana.